Buenos días, buenas tardes, depende de la hora que estén viendo este video. Hoy les estamos presentando los resultados de nuestro proyecto del curso de suelos, el cual hemos venido desarrollando por 2 cuatrimestres, el cual tiene un título llamado Efecto de la aplicación de purín bovino sobre las propiedades químicas y el tejido foliar del pasto Megathyrsus maximus cultivar Mombaza. Ese fue desarrollado en la Universidad EARTH. Este trabajo buscó determinar si la aplicación periódica de purín bovino, este es un subproducto orgánico de la actividad ganadera, puede mejorar la fertilidad del suelo y la calidad nutritiva del forraje en un sistema ganadero de doble propósito. Los compañeros que conforman nuestro grupo son mi persona, Aaron Gómez, Daniela Varela, Benita Irumba, Daudi Mwami y Similoluwa Yesubumi. Esto todo fue bajo la revisión del profesor José Eduardo Villalobos Leandro a lo largo de los 2 cuatrimestres. A lo largo del proyecto nos repartimos las distintas etapas, las cuales fueron empezando por el diseño experimental, después de la aplicación de los tratamientos en campo, muestreo foliar, muestreos de suelo químico, análisis de laboratorio y procesamiento de los datos en el estudio. Empezar con la introducción. Para dar un poco más de contexto, vamos a hablar sobre lo que es la fertilización orgánica de pasturas. Y para entender por qué hicimos este estudio, primero hablamos del contexto. La ganadería en el trópico enfrenta un reto constante: mantener la fertilidad del suelo y la productividad forrajera sin depender exclusivamente de fertilizantes sintéticos. Además de costosos, tienen una huella ambiental considerable, lo cual en sistemas de doble propósito como los de la región del Caribe de Costa Rica se genera de forma natural un subproducto orgánico muy rico en nutrientes, el cual es el purín bovino. Y bueno, uno de estos sería evaluar su impacto directo sobre el pasto Mombaza, que es una de las fuentes forrajeras más utilizadas en estos sistemas, podemos decirlo, agropecuarios de la zona Caribe de Costa Rica. Lo cual nos permite cuantificar qué tan eficiente puede ser el reciclaje de nutrientes dentro de la misma finca, en lugar de que el recurso se desperdicie. ¿Qué son los purines? El purín bovino es la mezcla líquida de orina, heces y agua de lavado que se genera en las áreas de manejo del ganado, ya sea en lecherías, en corrales donde pasa el ganado, lo cual es un efluente orgánico rico en nutrientes, en nitrógeno, potasio y materia orgánica, pero que en muchas fincas se está subutilizando. Hay muchas fincas en las que no utilizan este recurso y nosotros queríamos evaluar si como residuo puede servir para la fertilización de pasturas y así devolver un poco de lo que se está sacando del suelo de la finca. Este se maneja como un residuo que hay que desechar. Aprovecharlo como fertilizante no solo evita este desperdicio, sino que promueve una práctica de economía circular, porque cierra el ciclo de nutrientes dentro del propio sistema de producción y reduce la dependencia de fertilizantes sintéticos de alto costo, y los cuales se consiguen de una forma externa a la finca. Nuestros principales objetivos fueron evaluar el efecto de la aplicación periódica de purín bovino sobre las propiedades químicas del suelo y la composición nutricional foliar del pasto Mombaza. Para lograrlo nosotros planteamos 2 objetivos específicos. El primero, el cual es determinar la acumulación de macro y micronutrientes en el tejido foliar del pasto Mombaza, el cual fue sometido al tratamiento con efluente orgánico, es decir, ver qué está pasando dentro de la planta y qué está cambiando luego de la aplicación de estos purines. El segundo fue analizar la variación del pH, la acidez intercambiable y la materia orgánica y la disponibilidad de cationes en el perfil del suelo, específicamente entre los 0 y los 30 centímetros de profundidad, que es la zona de mayor actividad radicular del pasto Mombaza. Esto se hace porque este residuo, el cual son los purines, hay que analizarlo a ver si no influencia de una mala manera sobre el suelo, creando acidez o otros tipos de problemas que podamos recibir más tarde.
The study area. The research was conducted at Animal Production Academic Unit of EARTH University, located in Mercedes Guasmo, Rimon, Costa Rica, and the experiment is located approximately 35 meters above the sea level. with the geographical coordinates of 10, 13, 12 north and 83, 35, 30 west. The area has a humid tropical climate with an average annual temperature of 25 degrees Celsius, relative humidity of approximately 83%, with annual rainfall around 3,400 millimeters. These environmental conditions are ideal for dairy production and a grazing system for the growth of Mombaza grass, which was the forage species evaluated in this study. Experimental design. To determine the effect of variable evaluated, two groups of variables were evaluated. Agronomic variables. First is forage quality. Leaf samples were analyzed in the laboratory to determine their nutritional composition. The objective was to evaluate whether the manure improved nutritional value of the pasture available for livestock. Secondary is soil quality. We evaluated both chemical and physical soil properties. These chemical properties includes soil pH, electrical conductivity, the total nitrogen, available phosphorus, other elements like potassium, calcium, magnesium, and cation exchange capacity, organic carbon. For physical properties included bulk density and total porosity. These indicators helped us to understand how slurry affected soil fertility and soil structure. Sampling procedure. Foliar sampling. Foliar sampling were collected from both control and manure treated paddocks. For the foliar sampling, we also aimed to obtain representative samples from each paddock, and we randomly selected a total of 10 plants per paddock. The leaves from the first 5 plants were obtained to make one composite sample, and the leaves from other 5 random selected plants were from different areas of the same paddock were combined to make the second composite sample. We followed these same procedures in all 4 paddocks and repeated it during each sampling period to ensure the consistency and the reliable comparisons between treatments. The samples were placed in a labeled paper bag and transported it to the laboratory. They were then dried in the first air oven at 60 to 65 degrees, passed for 48 hours ground, and passed through 1 millimeter sieve before chemical analysis. Soil sampling. To obtain representative soil samples, we followed a zigzag sampling patterns across each paddock, and we selected a total of 10 soil sub-samples per paddock, and each 5 sub-samples were combined to make a 1 composite sample, and another one also 5 sub-samples were collected from different points in the same paddock to make the second composite sample. We repeated the same procedure in all 4 paddocks to ensure uniform sampling and reliable comparison between the treatments. As I said before, the samples were replaced in the labeled plastic bags and transported to the soil laboratory for analysis. Now, statistical analysis. Finally, all collected data were analyzed using RStudio. For each response variable, an analysis variance, ANOVA, was performed to determine whether there were significant differences between treatments. Before performing ANOVA, the assumption of the model were verified. Residual normality was evaluated using simple weekly test, while homogeneity of variance were verified using renewal test. Whenever significant difference were detected at p less than 0.05, treatment means were compared using Tukey's honest significant difference test. This statistical approach allowed us to determine whether the application manure produced significant effect on pasture growth, forage quality, and soil property.
So in continuation, after doing the soil foliar and laboratory analysis, we got different results of different variables that we were evaluating. For instance, starting with the soil pH, as we can see in this box plot in this slide, we can see that as we are trying to compare the two treatments, the control and the treatment where we apply the slurry, the median pH value of the control was around 5.25, where the treatment group had a pH value around 4.88, which shows a 7% decrease within the treatment group. And also, an outlier of 5.3 was observed in the treatment group, and overall, we got a p-value of 0.098, which is higher than the conventional value of 0.05, and this leads us to concluding or understanding that there is no sufficient statistical evidence of concluding that the application of slurry is the one that actually changed the soil pH, as we can see, like in comparison with the pH values that we have. However, after going into research to see the relationship with our findings in the literature, we found a research that was conducted by John Langley at Bangor University in United Kingdom, where his research was about the effect of acidified slurry on soil chemistry. And one of the results that he found, he observed that the soil pH decreased up to 0.75 pH units immediately after the application. However, they also found that the soil gradually buffered the acidity, with pH returning to the levels similar to the control by the end of each growing season. So they concluded that soil acidification did not have a long-term negative effect on soil quality, while improving nitrogen retention by increasing the ammonium and reducing ammonium losses. Therefore, although our p-values does not allow us to conclude a statistical significant effect or to conclude that the slurry is the one that actually reduced the pH of the treatment, the decrease in the pH that we observed agrees or confirms and relates with the expected short-term response reported by Langley, and this suggests that our treatment influenced soil chemistry in the same direction described in the previous research. However, besides that, this could also be related with the fact that we used like few treatments, as we only used only two parcels for each treatment, whereby maybe by using like more treatment groups, like increased, like a lot of data could possibly increase a lot of variability or increase the chances of getting good precision. In addition to the soil pH, we also evaluated the exchangeable acidity, which is usually measured in centimoles of positive charge per kilogram of the soil. So the control group showed a very low variation, with values remaining close to 0.8 centimole per kilogram, whereas the treatment group had a lower median of 0.65 centimole per kilogram, although with greater variability ranging from 0.4 up to 0.9, as we can see in this box plot in this slide. So overall, this represents an 18.75 reduction in exchangeable acidity compared to the control. And the statistical analysis gave us a p-value of zero point 0.3, which is also above the conventional threshold value of 0.05, and still leads us to the conclusion that we do not have sufficient statistical evidence to conclude that this lower exchangeable pH was because of the application of the slurry. So, another interesting observation is that these results appear to contrast with the previous soil pH results. So, while the treatment group showed us a lower pH indicating a greater active acidity, it also showed a lower exchangeable acidity in comparison to the control treatment or to the control group, which would normally suggest a race reserve acidity. So, although these variables are related, they measure different aspects of soil acidity, as we all know. And soil pH reflects acidity in the soil solution, whereas the exchangeable acidity usually measures the amount of acidic ions, mainly the hydrogen and aluminium, that are held by the soil particles. So this contradiction may be explained or may have been caused by different factors according to the literature, and and according to the results by themselves. First of all, the slurry may have been temporarily acidified by the soil solution without substantially increasing the pool of exchangeable acidic ions. And in addition, the natural soil buffering effect could have happened, and also the time of the sampling after slurry application could have been a factor that led to these variations and contradictions. And also the fact that we had like a limited number of replicates, as I said, we only had two replicates per treatment, and also just a natural variability among the samples could have contributed to these contradictions or to these results. So, therefore, although we cannot conclude that the slurry affected the exchangeable acidity, our research results suggest that there is a change in soil acidity, which was likely temporarily and occurred primarily in the soil solution rather than in the soil reserve acidity. And as I said previously, having more replicates and more time for the analysis could possibly increase the precision of the results. In addition, moving to the agronomic performance of the Mombaza glass that we evaluated through the foliar laboratory analysis, the leaf biomass of the control group had a median value of 18 with relatively low variability ranging from 16 to 19.6. In contrast, the treatment group showed a high median approximately to 19.8, but with a wider range of variability between 15 and 23, indicating a very high or great variability across the parcels. So overall, like this variability that we are seeing like between the two treatments represents a 9.39% increase of leaf biomass for the Mombasa glass in the treatment that received the slurry or treatment where the slurry was applied. And after doing the statistical analysis, the ANOVA statistical analysis, we got a p-value of zero point 0.3 as it is indicated in the box plots, which still says that we do not have sufficient statistical evidence to confirm that the slurry is the one that actually led to the increase of the leaf biomass. However, it could be visibly seen, like in the form that the paddock or the parcel where the slurry was applied had the pasture with very high vigor that had high chlorophyll and that had like high height, like or like a good height in comparison to the parcel where the slurry was not applied. So like even though this p-value is showing us that there is no statistical evidence to confirm that the slurry actually led to the to high biomass of in the treatment group, it might be because of the few repetitions that led to a few data set of like during the analysis. And also, so however, the median value observed in the treatment group suggests a positive trend that is biologically justifiable because slurry usually provides essential nutrients such as nitrogen, which promotes leaf development, chlorophyll formation, and photosynthesis, so ultimately supporting greater biomass production, as I previously mentioned. And in addition to the previous research conducted by John Langley in the United Kingdom, they found that the acidified cattle slurry improved the nitrogen retention in the soil by increasing the ammonium availability and reducing the ammonium losses. So their study also reported that high nitrogen fertilizer replacement values and improved nitrogen efficiency, creating more favorable conditions for crop growth, in this case being the pasture that we are trying to evaluate. So, like, despite the fact that the p-value says that like something different or says that there is no sufficient statistical evidence to confirm about the activity of the slurry, the increase of the biomass is consistent with expected agronomic response of improved nutrient availability, and additional replicates or larger sample size would be needed in order to determine whether this trend represents a true treatment effect. So overall, the slurry application is associated with a 7.05% pH decrease and an 18.75% exchangeable acidity decrease and a 9.39% biomass increase, like for the Mombaza grass in the treatment. So, although none of these results were statistically significant, or though their p-values were all above the conventional threshold of 0.05, these results are consistent with the previous scientific researches that were done by other researchers. So to confirm results or to confirm everything that we've seen, additional replicates or larger sample sizes would be needed or would be helpful to confirm whether these effects actually had an impact, or to confirm the effects with a greater statistical confidence.
After the whole studies and analysis during the semesters, we came into conclusion that this study demonstrated that the application of cattle slurry, which is the purín, has the potential to improve both soil fertility and pasture performance in tropical livestock production systems. So, one of the objectives, we started out by evaluating the changes in soil pH, the electrical conductivity, the nutrient, and organic matter. And then this result shows that this slurry application modified soil chemical properties in such a way that promoted better nutrient availability while maintaining conditions suitable for pasture growth. And of course, it was in comparison to the testigo. So these improvements highlight that the importance of organic fertilization in supporting soil health and sustaining long-term productivity. And one of our other objectives that we evaluated was to determine the accumulation of macronutrients and micronutrients in this Mombaza. So after the application, so the findings indicate that this slurry served as an effective organic nutrient source, enhancing nutritional status for both the soil and the pasture, which suggests that the cattle slurry can contribute to a more balanced nutrient cycle by returning valuable elements to the production system instead of treating them as ordinary waste. Furthermore, the study also demonstrated that improving soil fertility translated into better pasture development. Healthier soils provided a stronger foundation for forage growth, which is essential for maintaining productive grazing systems. Overall, cattle slurry proved to be sustainable management practice that not only recycle farm nutrients but also support pasture productivity while reducing dependency on synthetic fertilizers. So these findings reinforce the value of integrating organic waste management into livestock production to improve environmental sustainability and resource efficiency. So in summary, our results indicate that cattle slurry, which is a perennis, is an effective organic fertilizer because it improved soil fertility and nutrient availability for this Mombaza grass. However, its effectiveness depends on the proper management, correct application rates, and regular analysis to prevent toxicity to the soil. Excessive or poorly managed applications can cause environmental problems, so slurry should be used as part of a well-planned nutrient management strategy rather than an unlimited fertilizer waste. Based on our findings in this study, we recommend that cattle slurry should be considered as a valuable organic fertilizer rather than just a normal waste product. Livestock producers can incorporate it into pasture management programs to recycle nutrients efficiently and improve soil quality over time. However, its application should always be based on appropriate management practices to ensure that nutrient inputs match pasture requirements and avoid potential environmental impacts. Likewise, we recommended that farmers should regularly monitor their soil chemical properties and nutrient availability when using cattle slurry so as to prevent any form of occurrence that might cause toxicity to the plant or to the soil itself. So periodic soil analysis can help determine the most appropriate application rate and frequencies, allowing producers to maximize agronomic benefits while maintaining soil health and preventing nutrient imbalances. So for future research, longer-term studies should be conducted to evaluate the cumulative effect of repeated slurry applications on soil fertility, pasture productivity, and environmental quality. Additional research could also compare different slurry application rates, their season, and pasture species to identify the most efficient management strategies under tropical conditions. Finally, integrating cattle slurry into livestock production systems represents an important step toward more sustainable agriculture for now and our future generations. So by recycling nutrients within this farm, producers can improve resource use efficiency, reduce fertilizer costs, and promote environmental responsible pasture management while maintaining productive grazing systems. So thank you very much for your attention.